Hi, I'm Liz.
And I'm Rhea.
Welcome to Karma's My Bitch, a podcast about
sex,
love,
magic,
desire,
purpose,
bliss,
and how life isn't simply the stories we tell ourselves. Sex, drugs, bliss. If we're the divine, do they even fit together at all?
Yes, they actually do, which is why this gets its own episode. How interesting. Now, this is, just as a caveat, this is not the episode where you get to say, well, the karma bitch has said it was okay, so I'm going to go out and do a bunch of drugs.
Okay.
Okay? Not until you're in bliss. How about that? This is not us excusing certain trauma-informed behaviors and addictions, so just going to put that out there now.
Mm-hmm.
But we've preached, and I know we've said this before in other episodes, after karma, there are no rules. That's the point, right? A separation world and a polarity world relied on rules to keep us in control. Post-karma, those rules do not apply to us.
That's why the whole karmic process is there, because we've got to burn out those parts of us that hold shame and judgment over our choices.
Yeah.
And so that by the time we've reached happiness and we're kind of in our fate and we've got our purposes, our relationships, our passions, that's what defines how we live our lives, not the rules.
Precisely. And that's actually what that hell period is for, which we've said on average lasts about 6 weeks, because while we've been undergoing the karmic undoing process, what really helps solidify the values by which we will choose to live through magic and through our fate, that's actually what helps refine those values, is that hell period. For most people, they go through the karmic undoing process, they slough away all the rules that governed their behaviors that made them really unhappy. So by the time they would get to their hell period, either those standards by which they would choose to live have been solidified, or they go through a process by which they have to burn out the final bit. Now, I'm not talking about burning out our fears or the karma bit, but it's the all the things I held true, even now, they get challenged so that we're no longer hanging on, white knuckling our lives. It's like the final free fall. Sorry, I was for some reason I felt like I was going to say that wrong. Because one of the things that informs this sense of strict right and wrong, this rigid world in which we live that's defined by separation, has a lot to do with our ego. And so one of the most important parts of the karmic undoing process and hell is to settle the ego, because the ego's always on us. It's always on us about doing the right thing or the wrong thing, or feeling really good about challenging that, but to its perceived limitations. So even if I engage in this quote unquote bad or wrong behavior, my ego is going to tell me it's because I'm amazing and I'm a superhero, and I'll be the exception. As much as it can also tell me, oh no, if you do this will be really bad for you. When in general, by the time we've burned all of that out, we're going to know what's going to feel right to us and what doesn't, and what we're going to engage with and what we won't. So that way we are not living by any rules. They are really our own standards and values. And they all have to do with oneness. What
do you mean by that? They all have to do with oneness.
All of our standards and values by which we live will all have to do with oneness. As in, I will always, whatever I do, however I engage with, whomever I'm relating to, I will always remain at one with myself. And that is how we remain in integrity. I will do things because I want to, because they feel right to me.
Okay.
And we're wiring in all of that throughout our karmic undoing process.
So by the time when we're in bliss, when, we're truly free,
yes,
we're creating, and we're doing so from a place that cannot abide by these general rules that govern separation and our behaviors.
Yeah.
But we'll still be aware that our choices move us closer to or bring us further from the divine within, that oneness that you were just talking about.
Yeah.
So that is kind of what becomes our compass when it comes to substances, I guess, and sex and all that kind of stuff. Is it, does this feel right to me in this moment? And I've definitely had those experiences where I was saying no to so much, and then one day I went, you know what, actually, yeah, okay. But it didn't mean I was going to do it every time either. It just meant, I know I'll do it when it feels right. And so I have a very different relationship to it all.
Yes.
But it's a very different relationship to this stuff.
Yes.
Because it's not that I need it. It's not that it's necessary. And it's not that it's habitual.
No.
Sometimes I might just want it. But I know that that time might not be every time.
No.
And so there's a freedom to it. And there's a freedom to it. And actually, you know, I know that you're going to say that, oh, you know, we've been laughing a lot about how these episodes could have been an email. But this one makes sense to me because I guess like everything that was in separation.
Yeah.
That we've kind of thought bad, good, right, wrong.
Yeah.
Now that when you're kind of not in that place anymore, we do have to go back and look at it again and think to ourselves, well, how do I feel about this? And the answer is, well, without the judgment and shame, maybe sometimes yes, maybe sometimes no.
Right.
And when it comes to these, to substances and things like that, I find it fascinating because we look to governments to deem whether something's good or bad or illegal or not illegal or how it works or anything like that. When actually that's constantly shifting. If we're looking at the tent poles and trying to control us, I think it's just quite interesting.
It is. And all those things that have been cast out by separation are all now coming to the fore, which is why this does get its own episode, because we're really having to examine all these things that have been part of our reality but have been shrouded in shame and judgment. And they are going to be front and center all the time as substances become legalized. As we also have to examine, though, the ways in which they were abused because of our karmic realities, because of our separation realities.
And how much we use them to like run away.
To escape, avoid, that have contributed to our addiction and our substance abuse world and relationships, which have also damaged us. So we want to hold those in the sense of they wronged us, but at the same time, they also exist and they will continue to exist. So if we're not going to
forget how to make it.
No. So if we don't really acknowledge and examine our relationship to it, because everything is up. Everything is up for negotiation. Everything is up when it comes to how we relate to it, not just them and others. Oneness is relational because it's about our relationship to everything in this world. And drugs are not an insignificant part of that world. More and more as they become legalized, because of the internet, because of accessibility in a way that didn't exist when I was younger. I mean, literally also, to your front door at this stage, right?
Yeah,
like,
but also like
pizza.
drugs. Like, but when you say drugs, I think about it. I also think about like the pharmaceutical industry.
Precisely.
I think about the oxycodone shit that went down, the weight loss jabs. I think about there are so many different foreign substances we put into our bodies that aren't necessarily recreational in the traditional sense. But some are gold stamped because they are apparently for our health, and some are not.
Right.
And part of the appeal of kind of like when we're younger, definitely for me, with dabbling was the kind of forbidden fruit part, which caused me equal amounts of fear and freak out and also excitement, right? Yes. So then the question comes like, you know, and so I always thought, well, when it's not forbidden anymore, because you're like,
I'm laughing the idea of like you like freaking out yet being also excited just makes me laugh.
I mean, you know exactly. You can imagine
being
it.
in the
You
corner,
can exactly
all
imagine
paranoid.
It. Like, I mean, like paranoid but excited all at the same time. Then I'm like, oh, it's really not a big deal as I thought it was. So then as you kind of grow up and then it stops having that kind of similar function, right? Because it's not like I'm going to prove that I can break a rule by doing this, or I'm going to prove how hard I am by doing this, or I'm going to remind myself that I'm free because I can do this, you know, whatever else. Like how does it, when you interact with it again, it just is like when it's not forbidden fruit and it's just fruit.
I mean, is it
then
just
you just
a
take
sweet?
it when you want to feel it. You know, even if it's not just as sweet, like, is it?
Is it?
I don't know.
You don't have to answer that for yourself, but that's the thing is everyone will have to answer that to some degree, as opposed to looking to its leadership to tell them what to think about it. No one is far removed from substance abuse to some degree because of this separation world. That's the irony, is that separation will, and its tent poles will regulate our relationship to substances of any kind, right? Whether legal or not legal, I mean, right down to caffeine, really. I mean, I think like there was some mayor in New York that was like, oh, okay, I'm going to outlaw this size drink or whatever because of all the caffeine, like, and sugar. But when that is controlled, we become controlled, just like we discussed in the previous episode. We don't know how to regulate our relationship to any of these things. But then what's also interesting is then we start to look at psychedelics for healing work. And then we're having to contend with how useful is that in this world of separation. We're never really going to understand our relationship to anything, but we're really going to have to examine our relationship to it all. Sex, drugs, everything. Because all the things that were deemed wrong and bad and illegal by a leadership that most people now mistrust, don't believe in, or don't have respect for, people will naturally gravitate to it, which is fascinating. And interestingly, as long as we've lived in a separation world, we've always required these coping mechanisms to fill the hole in the vacuum that existed within all the spaces that kept us apart from our bodies and then continued to keep us apart. That's the irony of it all.
So really, if you're using sex, drugs, anything like that as a way to kind of run away from your pain, you'll end up with pain.
Yes. So long as there's a sense that there is something bad about it, as alluring as it is, it will also be taken with fear. And so then we keep the fear going. Now, the issue with this is that we're going to be seeing, this entire, our whole relationship to drugs, whether illicit or legal, is going to have such far-reaching consequences for at least 4 generations. That's what we're looking at in terms of our relationship to drugs. Like, it will take less time for sex, if that tells you anything, because that's personal in many ways. It's us and another person or whomever. Something we can more readily resolve, which is why we talked about it so much in our karmic books, but we didn't really touch drugs because there is so much wrapped up in that. For as much as is wrapped up in sex, as far as judgment and shame, when it comes to drugs and chemicals, the amount of damage that addiction and that these chemicals can wreak havoc in our brain, it is really difficult to be able to say, oh, yeah, sure, go ahead. Yeah. There are no rules. It's a lot more complex than that.
Very much so. Because it becomes a disease. Because
all it does is it takes all of our discomfort and our karmic separation realities, brings them up to the surface, but does not fix them. So then we need more to be able to numb ourselves from what we're trying to numb. Or what we're using to numb. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So when the life is unhappy, go to something to help you run away from it. And then you become addicted to that runaway, but you just keep having to have more and more and more of it in order to keep that numbing feeling. Mm-hmm. And then you lose yourself so much that really it's about, if you're in separation, you can't really do drugs.
And there's no benefit to it because it takes you so much further away from yourself. And thus, as we said earlier, further from what brings you closer and further from the divine. Mm. And often that will plug the hole briefly where you do feel a bit more divine. But on the whole, it moves you so far away that you could get to a point where you cannot claw back.
Yeah.
You really cannot. Initially you can, but you really can't. So now when we're looking at microdosing, whether it's plant medicine, natural medicine, mushrooms, whatever, some of these drugs that are also used to heal or microdosing in a way to also bring us to full healing spiritually, you're going to run into the same issue, but it's actually worse. Vibrationally, bliss is thus far the highest vibration we can reach within our human bodies, for lack of a better term, spiritually, where we are not just in divine consciousness, we are the full divine, right? Well, divine consciousness is knowing that we are the full divine, but we are running full divine power and we are operating from full divine will. If you are using these drugs to even get close to that or heal, you will never be able to maintain that vibration without them if you've wired yourself to depend on those substances. So there will be always something that's going to be missing in that relationship because you've required something outside of you to bring you from one level to the next. So if you go without, there will be no bridge between those levels if you cannot build it yourself. And if you've relied on them for so long, then you start to lose the capacity to build it yourself.
Because you don't even think it's possible. And you need to think something's possible in order for it to be probable, in order for it to be guaranteed, blah, blah, blah.
I need to be able to run that level of power through me. And I clearly do not believe I have it. And this is not some do or die situation, honestly. Like, I mean, I know I sound serious about it, and it is serious, but it doesn't mean that you can't reach happiness.
And also, can't you just stop?
You can stop, but what we're saying is vibrationally, you won't get there.
Okay. But how many years would you have to be
microdosing? Or it's not just microdosing, but it's also the sort of habitual practice of it. It's not a matter of years. It's a matter of times you do it. And so you can maybe look at 5-6 times. And we're talking about full dosing, not talking about microdosing. Microdosing, it could be more.
5-6 times of what, doing drugs ever in your life?
No. Of doing it specifically with the intention of like raising your vibration.
Mm-hmm. Fine. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry
for that tangent.
But don't a lot of people say that, like, you know, they kickstarted their spiritual journey by doing ayahuasca, or how does that all work?
And and my one ayahuasca trip, or like my 3 ayahuasca trips, have just like shown me everything, and now I'm in complete oneness. Yes, it can connect you to the all because it releases all the barriers that you've constructed because of separation. But what we're talking about is vibration and power. And so even if you've been able to connect to the all and your mind is blown, and you're actually like literally blown too sometimes, and then you're able to see a lot of things that have been like behind the veil, that's fine. That can take you through a certain degree, I guess, it can take you up a certain degree in terms of...
But you've got to do the rest of it yourself.
But that's more about consciousness than vibration. And bliss is vibration, pure vibration. Fine. You want to raise your frequency, thus raise your consciousness. That's great. We need more of that. That's okay. And however you choose to do it, we just are offering one that like maybe won't like hurt your brain and like blow out all of your bodies too. But frequency is not vibration. So you can have all the consciousness you want, and you can write all that, but where your vibe is has a lot to do with where your own power is and how you exercise it and who you are in this world. And ideally what we want to look for is a match up, not where your frequency is so high because you've done enough trips that like you see the all. Okay, that's fine. But what does that mean for you here and now?
Yeah, how are you relating to other people? How are you relating to yourself? What are you doing with your life? Are you clear? Yeah. Do you want to apply the lessons you've learned so that you embody them, or do you just know them and you sit on your like little ego shelf?
Precisely. Because what none of these things will do will actually quell the ego, which I think is a really important like factor in terms of how we rewire and how we change ourselves and transform. Imagine then you've done the whole karmic undoing process, you've gone through hell, and you now live according to all the oneness values: harmony, tolerance, respect, compassion, whatever, all of those that we've discussed. But drugs are still here, whether legal or illegal. That doesn't matter so much to you because you're just living according to these values and you're not out there hurting anyone. Do you still have drugs? Like, do you still take drugs? Do you still engage with it? And the answer is yes, you can. And it's not about us giving you permission, but it's understanding that then your relationship to yourself and others by bliss is so wired in that doing and partaking in drugs is not going to change that at all. It's all about enhancement. So it's not about distraction or numbing. Like, oh, I'm having a shit day and I'm going to go do this. If you're doing that, you're not in bliss. And nor are you necessarily saying, I'm going to go to this party and I think this is going to make the party more fun. Yeah. That's not necessarily how you approach it either. It's more, it could be, I'm at a party, this is available, this could be really fun to do with my friends. Sure, why not? Because I know how I am if I were to engage with this. Because we're also not going to go into the fully unpredictable. Yes, in bliss, you are creating your reality, but you're not engaging in things that don't have some kind of predictable factor. Because you're not going to do anything that's going to run counter to where your vibration is.
You just won't.
No, you will not. Just as we've said that like sex and drugs can kind of like clear pathways in terms of consciousness, sex is a lot easier to engage with and manage than drugs, which carry a level of potency that most human brains cannot manage without splitting. So I guess that's our caveat. If you've already known yourself on drugs and how you respond to drugs, you don't turn around and say, well, now I'm in bliss. Now I can go do whatever I want. It doesn't work that way. You know yourself so inside out that, again, you're going to know how you operate on these drugs and what they do to your body. Because you will not, again, and I will say this 5 more times, you will not engage in anything that doesn't have some kind of predictability. Not when it comes to something that could potentially damage you. So there are easier ways to reach wholeness and oneness, without risk, and living in a place or from a place as the full divine and bliss. So it that ensures that we do not break in the process. So while we're saying, yeah, go ahead and do drugs, we're also just saying, again, but be clear. Now, what's interesting is that when it comes to our younger generations, they're really going to show us, and they're going to be very reflective of this relationship to substances that humanity and that humankind has actually developed. And we always have to remember it is, and I'm not going to say, well, it's not our fault. I mean, we've created this big mess, right? But it is a function of separation. So when we look at our relationship to substances, as all these conversations about legalization come up, we have to use it. We have to see it as an examination of our lives in separation. Not because, oh, this is so addictive and this is dangerous. So it doesn't work to kind of look at it from a level of something that's bad and dangerous for us. But
you just wouldn't leave the house.
No, but really as a function of, well, this is something separation created and thus has wrought on us. So how are we going to address it? Because our young ones, they're showing us, like they're the ones who are consuming less. But it doesn't mean that this conversation will not be front and center. What we have to understand is that we can incorporate drugs of whatever our choosing to enhance our experiences. But it's also important to consider that bliss does not know dependency. Yeah. It does not know addiction. We do not bring an addiction into bliss. It's not possible. We will not achieve that vibration. That's just full stop. Our relationship to our bodies will always be under scrutiny, as in we will always be facing whatever is keeping us out of these vibrations, whether they be magic or bliss. Because God knows who wouldn't develop some kind of codependency in their karmic reality.
I mean, I had a million.
We all have them. We all have them. There isn't an exception because there's something we have to use to keep us connected while we're in separation, something that's going to fill the gaps. And we'd be in such stupid denial if we said, well, quit drugs first and then the rest will come. My God, that's really difficult. It's not saying it's impossible. It's just really difficult. And it's a big ask. And it's deeply unfair, in my opinion, that we try to get people to do that. It's just cart before the horse. Because we have to acknowledge where all this comes from.
Separation.
And then we can start to have compassion for everybody's, for lack of a better word, journey. Because the divine didn't come here to be addicted to anything but itself and its own power. But even then, that's not addiction. That's just like life. Its own life, its own power. So when it comes to looking at microdosing and considering it as, yes, it's fine. Some people are just going to maintain a certain vibe as a result. But it does start to diminish our creative capacity, because we won't be able to tease out what gives us that creative capacity. Is it the thing I'm microdosing or is it me, And in bliss, it's always us. It is only us. And we have that capacity and we know we do. Otherwise, we wouldn't fucking be here in body, battling all the things we've been battling, throughout most of our lifetimes. We would have just called it. Like, what's the fucking point of struggle?
Yeah, honestly,
we didn't come here to struggle our entire lives and be like, well, that's life? Come on. We did it for a reason, and we have to remember what that reason is and not forget.
And sometimes it's about just also transcending it.
Yeah.
Being done. I'm done. I'm done suffering.
Yeah.
I'm done with all of that. I want something new, something better. I want a different meaning and purpose of my life. If I'm here, I get to assign my own reason. And that reason is not going to be suffering if I'm assigning it for myself.
Right.
It's going to be all the other stuff.
And it could be part of the karmic assignment, right? I got to burn out my karma. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
But it's, we have these goals and they're really important that we not forget them.
This episode is brought to you by Karma Magic Bliss. For more information, resources, and links to our books, check out our website, karmamagicbliss.com, and Karma Magic Bliss across all socials.
And if you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review.